So how do you seal a painted project without the sealer lifting off the paint? That's going to be especially important if it's a layered paint job. That's coming up. Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Reitz. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today I've got a quick one for you. We're going to be talking about how do you seal a project that's been painted with the least amount of risk to all that hard work you just finished putting in. So why is this something we even need to talk about? Well, most of the liquid sealers that you're going to use on a project have to be brushed or rubbed onto the leather, which means there's some potential to one degree or another that sealer could lift the paint off your project. Lacquer-based sealers are particularly bad about this. So this piece right here is called Jewel. I did it for the Prescott, Arizona Leather Show, and I can promise you, if you've got a paint scheme like this, that's this in-depth, you don't want to take any risk on lifting that paint off when you put the sealer on there. I mean, we have a liquid-based sealer and a water-based paint. It's a pretty high chance that it's going to lift some of that paint off, and you would never be able to repair it. So what's the solution? Well, that's going to be an aerosol sealer. There's a few things that we're going to need to take into account before we decide which sealer to use and how many. But we'll talk about that more in just a second. The first question that we need to ask is, will the project be exposed to the elements, especially moisture like rain? If it's going to be, the best solution that I found is leather sheen. Because it has a waxy base to it, it's one of the best at repelling water. One downside to leather sheen is that because it does have that waxy base to it, it tends to have a little bit of a shine to it. And personally, I'm not a big fan of shiny leather in most cases. So what do we do about that? Well, you remember I mentioned that we have to decide how many sealers are we going to use. Well, if we have a project that's going to be potentially exposed to the elements and moisture, and we need it sealed, but we don't want it shiny, what we can do is we can seal it first with the leather sheen and then come back and seal it with a clear matte sealer, the same kind that you might get at any of the big box stores. So what that's going to do is going to give you the water resistance that you're looking for, but the clear matte sealer is going to knock that shine off the project. This trick also works for projects that are not going to be exposed to the elements. Let's say you've got a really intricate paint scheme and you're nervous about the upcoming steps. For example, the dragon that we had on screen a few minutes ago. Well, what you can do is you can take leather sheen, seal it really well with this, hit it with a few layers of the clear matte sealer. That's going to lock everything in nice and tight and give you the best shot at being able to antique the project without messing anything up. Now that we've talked about the when and the why, let's talk about the how. Well, the first thing we need to do is establish a couple of rules, 3 actually. First is going to be always store your aerosol sealers in a climate-controlled area. 2 is you don't want to use them in overly windy conditions. And 3, you want to use them in the temperature range suggested by the manufacturer. That's usually 65 degrees and up. Anytime I have ever tried to skirt these rules, I've always ended up paying the price by having a hazy project. So I really encourage you to stick to those rules and don't try to get around them. So how do we go about actually sealing the project? Well, we're going to lay it flat on the table, hold our can about 10 to 12 inches above it, and then work back and forth across it. But the important part here is we're going to start our spray 1 to 2 inches off to one side, and we're going to finish our spray 1 to 2 inches off to the other side. It's really important that we don't start and stop our spray on the project. Then from there, we're just going to work back and forth across it from different angles. First time might be right to left, second time might be top to bottom, third time might be diagonal. What this is going to do for us is make sure that we don't end up with bare spots and stripes in our sealer. From there, I'm going to put 10 to 12 coats of each of the sealers on the project, and that's going to lock it in nice and tight. So here's a bonus tip for you. You can take that same clear matte sealer and use it in between layers of paint. What this is going to do for us is going to lock those initial layers in nice and tight so that the new layers don't lift that first layer off as we add the new layers of paint. So that's going to do it for this video. If you found it helpful, do me a favor and click the like button. I'll see you in next week's video, and in the meantime, go make something amazing.